I'm doing, everyone. Welcome to this fine rainy day. Clem 2 has come down to our part of the world, and it's supposed to rain for like at least a solid week or more. And we've been having some pretty good rain today. And we're already pretty soggy down here. But I know some of you that watch from Pennsylvania and places, it's been quite dry where you are. So, Lord willing, you will have and can have some of our rain that we're having here. But anyway, I hope you're having a good day. Um, we're in our series, Little Things. And it started off with me just thinking about little things in the Bible. And we're going to get to that in the series in a bit, but then it kind of morphed into how sometimes we consider ourselves to be little people, as in, the Lord can't really use us. He needs the professionals to go there and do it. The problem is that God did not design his ministry to be done by the professionals. By professionals, I mean pastors and teachers and missionaries and uh, people of that sort. Um, they were meant to train the rest of us, rest of you, since I'm a pastor, I should say it that way. We're there to train the rest of you about how to do ministry because it's actually you guys that are supposed to be out there telling people about the Lord and what he's done for you and what he can do for others. But I find that all of us are really good at excuse making of giving all the reasons why we can't do it. And so the series has kind of started off focusing in on some of the characters in the Bible, really important characters, people that accomplished really important things for the Lord, but they all started off saying, I can't. We first looked at Moses, and in spite of all that God had done in a miraculous way in his birth and upbringing that preserved him from being killed along with all the other male babies of the time by the Pharaoh's decree, and how he grew up with all the best education of the time and just all kinds of things. And then God did miracles right beforehand. He says, listen, I'm calling you. And Moses' response to the Lord was, I don't speak well. You really need to send somebody else. And God kind of got quite mad at that. We then went on to look at Isaiah. Isaiah wrote one of the biggest books in the Bible. He had a long, long ministry with, in particular, the part of Israel called Judah at a time when Israel had split apart. And so he's ministering to those people. And it was a significant ministry. And some of our best portions of scripture come from the book of Isaiah, like Isaiah 53. If you've never read it, and I'm sure you have, go and read that. It's a great prophecy of Jesus and how he would come one day and what he would do. But Isaiah started off saying, I really can't because I'm not a perfect person. And maybe you've said that one. Maybe you've said, like Moses, I don't speak well. I'm not a perfect person. So today we're looking at excuse number 3 from a guy named Jeremiah. Jeremiah also was a very significant prophet who went on to have a very long ministry, difficult ministry, very difficult ministry. His words were not popular. Again, some of the most significant verses that we have in the Old Testament are found right in Jeremiah. Some of my favorite verses in the Bible. I had a list, but I don't know what I did with them. Come from this man, Jeremiah, that the Lord was using. Again, these stories we read in our Bible, I believe, were given to us by God. He directed the writers to write what they wrote. And they're from God for a reason. And part of the reason is to encourage our hearts about our service to the Lord. So today we're going to look at his excuse because he had an excuse when the Lord called him. He too also said, I don't know, Lord, maybe I'm not the best guy for this job. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart and I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. I want you to think carefully about that because this is equally true for you and for me. This is one of those verses why as a Christian, we stand against abortion and we say that it is wrong because the unformed baby in actually most like anyway, the unformed baby in the mother's womb is a creation from God, is a full human being in development. And you should look at the development stages of a baby, how quickly they look completely like a human being. It doesn't take long at all. But he talks about the fact that God was putting him together exactly the way he wanted him put together. Before I formed you in the womb, even before that, I knew you. I was looking down from eternity past through the corridors of history, and I saw this time and a need that Israel had, and I saw this young man named Jeremiah. And I saw him in his mother's womb, and I formed him, and I made him the way I wanted him to be. And now the Lord is saying to him, I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Here's his excuse. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak because I'm too young. So there you have excuse number three. The first excuse for Moses, I don't speak well. So I can't speak for you, Lord. Excuse number two was from Isaiah. I'm not a perfect person, Lord, so I can't speak for you. And now we have excuse number three. Great. I am way too young. Now, there is some legitimacy to what Jeremiah is saying. He's not trying to, in the pure sense, make an excuse and get out of it. He understood that, like almost every culture everywhere, people want to hear from those who truly know what they're talking about. And that generally takes time and experience to get there. Wisdom is not a function of formal education. Wisdom is about understanding the basic principles of life and learning what it means to apply them to life. And that generally takes time. So we love our young people. We love seeing them get out there and do stuff. We love the enthusiasm of youth, but sometimes it's not always going to have all of the wisdom that an older person might have, or more just even an adult might have. And so we tend to look to adults when it comes to these critical things. But he says he's too young. Now, we don't know exactly what too young is. He probably was a teenager, maybe or maybe an early adult, but probably a teenager. It could include the concept of being a boy, but I don't personally believe the Lord would call a literal boy who's still supposed to be in home under the guidance of his parents. But somewhere in your teens, you're already starting to be looked at in those days as a young adult. It's life started sooner and faster for you back in the day. So I think he was probably a teenager. But as things go, even though he might have sort of been approaching adulthood, uh, he was on the young side. And this is the Lord's response to him. And let's take a look at that. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send to you and say whatever I command you. And do not be afraid of them. This is the reason why. And these things should destroy all of the arguments that we make about why we can't serve the Lord. For I am with you and I will rescue you. If you get yourself into a pickle, don't worry about it. I am there with you and I will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth, Jeremiah said, and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. Now, I have to tell you, I just realized as I'm sharing this with you, I'm speaking to you as somebody that the Lord asked to start teaching his word when I was only 16 years old. I was young. Now, I wasn't teaching adults, although I think somewhere around 17, I had to preach my first sermon in front of adults, and I felt totally inadequate, partly because I felt way too young for the job. But, I've been doing this since I was a young man, because that's what the Lord asked me to do. I have been in a teaching ministry of some sort for 49 years. Wow, that's scary to believe. You guys do the math. That makes me 65 years old. I want to tell you this. I don't know if somebody young is listening. You're not too young. But the bigger point is this, whatever the thing is that holds you back, I'm sorry, it's an excuse. Because if the Lord is calling you, and if you are a follower of Jesus, He is calling you to share the good news of Jesus with people. It's just an excuse. It is the Lord that does it. It's the Lord that watches over us. It's the Lord that gives us words. It's the Lord that rescues us. Just make yourself available and go out and do it. That's my word for today. Hope you have a good weekend. And Lord willing, on Monday, I think we're going to come back and start to look at young people who didn't realize they were too young and by God's help just went out and did it. And I hope that's encouraging to you as well. So anyway, between now and then, I hope you have a good couple of days.